Recent fighting game announcements have really brought up a topic that I feel needs to be discussed in this community. Change is necessary to avoid stagnation. Tekken 8 has announced that Heihachi Mishima is somehow alive after his final battle with Kazuya in Tekken 7. This was reportedly in response to a number of fans and even developers missing him, so they decided to completely invalidate Tekken 7's entire story, which was about the build up to and realization of the final fight between the two, where one would die and the other would go on to face Jin in the sequel. I always knew they'd bring Heihachi back. We don't see his body hit the lava, he's Harada's favourite, and he's been in every prior entry. There was no way he'd stay gone long term. However, the way they're going about it, to me, is utterly infuriating. For some players, story is irrelevant, and they just want to have him back in the games. And I guess those people are the ones Namco deems worth listening to? Honestly, it seems like they're pandering to people who don't give a shit about whatever story Tekken Project put out, despite how much time and money goes into them, and how much of the marketing focuses on that story, and those that do are the ones being punished for doing so. I had a brief debate with someone on Twitter who said they just wanted to see the Mishima feud continue, and I cannot understand this mindset. This feud has been spinning its wheels since Tekken 5, just picking one of the three characters to have sit out a game while the other two do stuff, achieving nothing now by the end of Tekken 8. I cannot get invested in a storyline that does not change or evolve. Heihachi's death was a big development, and whatever it is that happens to Kazuya in 8 seemed to bring the conflict to an end to lay the foundation for something new. But no, we have another devil character, and Heihachi is back not one game after he was tossed into lava. Kazuya at least sat out one game. Even if it's one of those clones from Devil Within, it still invalidates Heihachi's death in the same way that Bison's new clone thing in Street Fighter 6 does. It's hard to feel like the villain was toppled when someone who looks, sounds and fights exactly like him is still running around. And on the Mortal Kombat front, the only new ideas seen in this expansion are completely unoriginal, like gender swaps and rip-offs of Marvel movies. The former even takes you out of the story because it makes you wonder, why would Liu Kang do this? But in addition, we have the return of Noob Saibot. M1K set up a timeline where Bi-Han could remain Sub-Zero since he doesn't need to be removed from play to make room for Kuai Liang like last time, as the latter is now Scorpion instead of the second Sub-Zero. This opened up so many new possibilities for the story, with Bi-Han now being involved with the Cyber Initiative for the first time, and leading an evil Lin Kuei on the main stage of the narrative, where the clan had previously been evil as a bit player or good for the main stage. But no, just like Heihachi, we get one campaign of the change, and then the expansion just has everything revert, wiping away all of the promise of the original development just because fans and developers can't let characters go. Dead characters should be allowed to stay dead, even without a completely identical successor to take their place, and story development shouldn't be undone the second they're introduced. And for context, I'm talking about natural developments, not asinine retcons, so don't come at me with claims of hypocrisy. MK is especially egregious because 1. Roles are already being swapped around with the second Sub-Zero now being Scorpion and Raiden and Liu Kang switching roles, so having someone else become Noob Saibot, like the father Bi-Han let die and the game doesn't shut up about, would be a natural fit for this timeline. And 2, the very expansion they're putting Noob in is about an invasion from an alternate timeline, so instead of having Havoc turn the main Bi-Han into Noob, he could have just brought his own Noob, and we could have had a fight between the two forms of Bi-Han instead of just another Bi-Han and Kuai Liang fight. But even games without an obnoxious multiverse have an easy way to not undo narrative developments while still pleasing fans. Make them non-canon. Other games have done this for decades. Dead or Alive 3 kept Ein on the roster, despite him reverting to his Hayate persona in the story. He just doesn't feature in the story mode. Then they backported Hitomi from DOA 3 into DOA 2 Ultimate without a story, and kept Tengu from DOA 2U in DOA 4 the same way, despite him being dead. Raido, killed in DOA 1, then returned as a cyborg for a DOA 5 expansion, and wasn't made canon like that until DOA 6. And that's not counting those who were still alive, like DOA 2 Bayman or 4 to 6 Leon. Fans of these characters got to have them return so they could play as them, but they remained non-canon to those games so that their stories could remain unmolested by prioritizing gameplay over story. SNK had their own take on the concept, with the non-canon Nightmare Geese being present in several entries taking place after Geese died, and several other non-canon bonus characters keeping their gameplay alive even if they were out of the story for any number of reasons. I'm told that Guilty Gear has a few characters that died but remained on the roster, with their stories usually being flashbacks. Ultimate MK3 brought back the original Sub-Zero almost a decade before his reveal as Noob Saibot. Back then he was just the dead Sub-Zero from the first game, but they didn't contrive a resurrection, he was just there. Same with Human Smoke, who was canonically a cyborg throughout. Even NetherRealm has done it, with the Joker being on Injustice 2's roster, despite his death being the catalyst for the series events, only using him for a fear-toxin delusion in the story mode. And don't forget Goro being playable in MKX despite not being in the story due to having had his arms torn off. They didn't have him get them back just to come back in the game. That was going to go somewhere before the comic was cancelled. And Melina dies in MKX and is then non-canon DLC in 11. An argument can even be made for the human versions of the Revenants in MKX. And yes, even Tekken has done this. Kazumi Mishima, introduced in Tekken 7, is dead for the duration of the story, but is here on the roster with her arcade mode boss fight being non-canon. Likewise, Jun Kazuma remains missing since Tekken 3, but she's on the playable roster of 8. Why can't Heihachi do the same? Even if they do include DLC characters in story expansions, there is nothing stopping them from having the character be a nightmare or illusion, or exclusive to a non-canon side story, or just not having any story presence at all. There is absolutely nothing stopping them. They are not obligated to have Heihachi come back from the dead or be cloned to justify him being playable. They are not obligated to cut short Bihan's time as Grandmaster Sub-Zero just to bring back Noob Saibot, nor to do it before one game is even over. Fighting games continue to assert investments in the story, with even Tekken having a story expansion to showcase the DLC roster now. But it comes off much more as an obligation or a marketing ploy than genuine interest on the part of the devs when they refuse to let the story actually advance and evolve and change. We just get stuck with the same old rivalries and the same old rosters, while over 50% of the series roster is just left to rot so we can rehash the story from 2 games ago with the same 12 characters every time. Obviously, I'm not saying dead characters should be barred from ever coming back in the story, because there often is something interesting yet to be done with them. But it needs to come after some time has passed to let the story of their supposed death have time to play out. Both of the prior Heihachi deaths were undone in the very next game, and we had no time to explore a world where people talk about Heihachi after his supposed death. You have to watch Blood Vengeance for that. Some argue that Street Fighter 3 was that for Bison because of the series' warped timeline, but in the real world he died 1 game ago. It's not long enough. It should also be plausible that they can return, and falling into lava without devil powers to save him is not a plausible thing he can return from. And Get Out of Death free cards shouldn't be abused the way Heihachi's is. This is the 3rd time he's done this, and very little new has been done with him since before the 2nd. You think him meeting Reina will be a game changer? Don't be daft. And yes, it needs to be said that it's entirely possible that the direction these stories go will be amazing and will perfectly justify reverting the status quo so quickly. But with Heihachi coming back in the very next game, not because this was planned as part of a long-term arc, but instead because people missed him, and because he'll sell well, and M. Bison and Noob Saibot coming back in the very next games for, presumably, no less shallow reasons, I just don't see it happening. I think they're just back, or maybe replaced by an identical character, and fighting games will continue to tout their commitment to telling a grand story with so much time and attention put into presenting that story in the best way possible, despite being willing to disregard that narrative and its development at the drop of a hat, so that people whose favourite characters have been in a dozen other games won't feel bad when they're left out of one of them. What a joke. If you liked this video, why not subscribe and support me on Patreon like these fine people here? If not, then make sure to share it with your enemies so they can suffer along with you. Today's recommended video is Why Can't Fighting Game Villains Stay Dead by Rufalmonger, which you can watch for a slightly less volatile take.